Welcome back to Fast Market here on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Alex Coffey. But now let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Landon Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Landon.
Thank you, guys. Good to be here.
All right, so we're talking another airline today. We hit on Delta last week, but I'm looking at the chart of UAL. It's kind of reflective of the demand out there, higher prices, consumers willing to take down. The stock's up over 30% so far this month. So having a nice little rebound here. What kind of data do you have? Something to support this?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a fun time to be an airline investor the last like 4 or 5 days. On Thursday, American hiked their forecast. Their stock jumped tremendously. Delta went up about 3% that day. United went up about 7% that day. And then on Friday, Delta had their report, and they kind of they beat like crazy. They beat earnings, they beat revenue, but the stock didn't do as well. And now we've got United ready to report. So this is it. I think when you look at United stock, I mean, it has, like you said, it's had a tremendous run, up 35% or so just in a couple of weeks this year. Now we're hitting that sort of a kind of a top. I mean, you can go back on the chart, and every time it hits 50, it's had a lot of trouble over the last year and a half. And that's basically where we're at. We're just above 50 right now, 50.72. So yeah, this is for the technicians out there. I think that 50 is a bit of a top, and the data all supports really strong earnings. And it's kind of, I think this might be, I don't want to, bury the lead here, but it could be a little bit of a sell the news, because I think expectations are just so high. Delta did really well. Americans already raised their forecast. The data that we have has United doing better than Delta did as far as revenue, top line revenue, and their happiness is doing very well also. So everything that we've got looks good for this company. I mean, you pick a chart, it doesn't really matter, but this is the purchase intent chart here. You can see that the quarter that is that's underway right now is plus 13% year over year. So we think they're going to be able to guide higher. They're having a really strong January, which is actually backed up by TSA numbers. I think that January is the first month since COVID that we've actually had a higher TSA number going through the lines than 2019. We're about plus 4% on January so far. So this could be back to normal, I guess. For all the airlines. I think that's what all the investors are hoping for. And you can see what's on people's minds. Price sensitivity is one of the biggest ones. And as we've all seen, prices on some of these tickets are insane up. Some of them are 2x, some of them are 3x. Cancellations, of course, but when you talk about cancellations, you've got to note that United did really well over that mix-up. I mean, Delta they canceled 9% of their flights, and that should be really terrible news, but Southwest bailed them out by canceling 70% on January 26th. United was at 5% and only beat by American at 1%. So United fared well over that. And then if you look at, traveling for work, traveling for leisure, but really traveling internationally, I think is the biggest one for United. They have a big focus on that. I know the international travel's up quite a bit, especially to Europe. So I think that everything that we've got kind of says, well, we think United is going to put up really strong numbers. Unfortunately, I think everybody thinks United is going to put up really strong numbers, and the stock has just went on a huge run. So expectations are sky high, and whether or not you believe in technicals, there is a top at 50 or so, and so I'm hesitant going into this one. I think that the company's on the right path. I think they're doing great things, but I just worry that whatever they come out with is going to be sell the news, because it was all expected anyway.
Could be a fair point. I've kind of slated this as almost a tiebreaker. You mentioned American and Delta, how it was sort of a surprise that American came out and provided that positive update. But to me, the peculiar timing of right before your two biggest competitors report, and you're not slated to report for a couple weeks after, to me was they knew they had a positive message and maybe weren't so sure their competitors had a positive message to spin. So you compare and contrast Delta. Of course, the numbers were okay. The quarter one guide, not so impressive. That led to some of the downside. Now United gets to play tiebreaker. But if we could come back to some of those themes that you were tracking, Landon, I really want to ask you this is more of a relative performance kind of a question. You talked about, hey, near term, maybe it's a little bit extended, and who knows what's going to happen even on strong numbers. But I look at some of these trends. Obviously, price sensitivity being a big one, talking about how, maybe we've squeezed as much out of consumers as we can as an airline sector as a whole here. So margins, your ability to manage costs is going to be a big deal. But I look at the next four. These four and how they've been trending sounds like it might be finally now, post-COVID, time for Southwest to pass the baton back to the other three. As leisure is not the biggest reason for travel anymore. It's all about work and international. And then, of course, they dominated the flight cancellation. So how does a United fare right now pinned against a company like Southwest or pinned against one of its other peers?
Yeah, so, forever it was Delta and Southwest at the top on happiness, and you can see how far Southwest has fallen here, ticker LUV at the bottom. And it's always been United and American falling behind, several points behind as they are here, but really it's just Southwest that fell off. So they've opened the door for someone else to take this. And you're right, Southwest has always been the leisure travel company. Delta's been business, and then you can argue about the role of United American. I think there's a little more international there. But that's kind of a mix of everything. So among the trends that we showed, leisure was the low. They all gained, but leisure was the smallest gain. Work was the largest, and then international was almost right there with work. So I think that Southwest is in a bad spot right now because of what's happened. They've got the trends working against them. But to be fair, leisure came back first. Right? It was the one that, everyone started flying on their own personally before their business started sending them places, just out of caution. I think that's just the nature of people versus corporations. So the year over year may be a little misleading there. I think that they've already kind of all come back, but now it's time for all these others to get their customers back. So I think that Southwest has dug themselves in a hole. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, they're out of it, and it's time for American and United to take over when it comes to, all of the leisure travel or right there with Delta. I think Southwest will make a comeback. I think it's just going to take a little while. They've got to earn trust back. But right now, American and United did a really good job over the holidays when it comes to flight cancellations, again, at 1% and 5%, very, very small numbers, better than Delta. So I think that they've gained some trust back, and they're expanding all their flights, a lot more flights to Europe. They're ordering new planes. So everything looks very positive for the top three companies. Southwest has just got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and we talked about Delta last week, and you guys were spot on that you like the company, right? And a lot of your data pointed to that, but the stock had already made the move, right? So it's pulled back from those levels. Are you seeing the same thing for an earnings score going in for United with, on a technical basis, it's overbought on an RSI, and just the spike at 34% so far this year?
It's tough, right? Like, how do you buy that unless you think it's just going to be unbelievable news? And we've got their data coming in at slightly stronger than Delta's numbers, right? Just to give you a little bit of comparison, so you can see how Delta was lining up. The only, I think, difference is going to be in that we think their forecast could be a little bit better. You talked about that a minute ago. Their current quarter pace is doing much better. I had that chart up a little while ago. I think it was plus 13%. So we do like that. The other angle that, Alex, I love that you brought it up, is sort of the game theory of why did American release that. So we've got the tiebreaker here. It was an interesting move to do that. A lot of times you see that on the other direction, where if you're going to break the silence before an earnings report, it's to report bad news, just to kind of get it out of the way, rip the Band-Aid off. But they did the opposite before their competitors reported. So that was kind of an interesting move. And so maybe they know something that we don't. But again, we've got pretty good data when it comes to social media and also web visits, traffic, things like that. And everything that we've got is saying it's going to be slightly better than Delta's report, and the forecast will be a little bit better as well. So I think it's bullish, but I just would think that everybody is on that side, especially with the stock going from 37 to 50 over the last 2 weeks. So I have a hard time seeing this company come out with a report that blindsides everybody to the upside. We're all shocked at how well they're doing, and this stock runs to 60. I just don't see it happening. So for me, it's maybe stay away or maybe play it to the downside. But if you're a long-term investor, I say just wait till after the report. I think it'll probably dip a little bit, sell the news type situation.
Yeah, I like that setup. That trader mentality, Landon, when I see charts like that, it just scares me a little bit just because it might already be priced in based on what American said, what Delta came out with, and some of the TSA numbers. All right, great stuff as always, Landon. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, that's Landon Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio, breaking down the data on UAL. It's going to